The last few months have been challenging to us, like all business institutions, and we have the pivot to create new programs and change the way we serve. Hence, the reason why we took some time to give a bit of quiet time to our members, and now we are back with new programs and events. During the session, the later part of the program, our MAHRP President, Mr. Afif, will highlight some of the upcoming events. So today's event is focused on data-driven HR, transforming the organization with people analytics. We have a great speaker, Dr. Jaclyn Lee, who has spoken in previous MAHRP events, who will guide us on the topic and share some great practices. Up next in the agenda is to deliver an opening remark by our President, Mr. Afif. Over to you, our President, MAHRP, Mr. Afif.
Thank you, Irasha, and very good afternoon all. It's lovely to see MAHRP members and also our community members that are joining with us for this event. I know it's been a while that we have not connected with you. We took a little bit of break because we have been doing a lot of virtual events, literally on a monthly basis. In some months last year, and especially the first part of this year, even 2 events per month. So you have seen a lot of us on virtually. In fact, we thought that at the beginning of 2021, things are going to be a little bit better than what we have experienced in 2020, especially since 2020 March. And we were even planning to have our HR convention, a hybrid event in March, April. And that is when you probably know that we started having cases and we were not able to have this event. We in fact had planned to have an event in Male, and I believe at the time the HPA had a guideline where you could have smaller events, like our HR best practice share. We even booked the venue, and a week after we booked the venue, which is 2 weeks prior to the event, HPA's new guidelines stated that you can't have events anymore. So then Ramadan came, so we took a little bit of break. We wanted the team members to get a little bit away from the Zoom fatigue or the virtual fatigue, and we're now back. So this is the beginning of a new plan that we are going to bring to all of you. You will have monthly series. So this month, I'm very pleased that we're about to have a seasoned HR professional, Dr. Jacklyn, who is going to take us through. Our MC will introduce Jaclyn in a moment before she take over the stage. But today's topic is really important. It's about transformation. And when it comes to transformation, how you can use the data that we encounter every day to the best of our ability. And also, I will meet all of you at the end of our event today, and I will brief you on some of the upcoming events that we have lined up for our community and the team. So without further ado, I would like to hand over back to our MC and host of this event today, Irasha. Irasha, over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the enlightenment and making us all want more to have to be part of the team MAHRP. Thank you so much for everything you do to keep us all entertained and at the same time not to let us down, just give us more and more, and we keep on asking for that. And you, as MAHRP, as a team, we try to bring all the HR professionals together. Thank you so much for doing that. So the next part is the most important item. It's a keynote delivered by Dr. Jaclyn Lee. As HR professionals become more versed in the use of data analytics, and they're also using it to formulate strategies around the recruitment, performance management, employee engagement, and learning. In this interactive session by Dr. Lee, will take us through the topic of people analytics. She will start with an introduction to the importance of using data and how this can change the way HR manage each function aspect of HRM. The talk will also introduce the skill sets needed to start at analytics function and how to begin the data science journey and the types of statistical tools used to analyze the crunch data. Dr. Lee will share her vast HR experience in both the private and public sector and how she has used data effectively to add value to the organizations she has worked for. Dr. Jaclyn Lee is currently the Chief Human Resource Officer with the Singapore University of Technology and Design. She is a veteran HR leader with over 25 years of HR experience and is viewed by the community as a thought leader in the areas of HR technology and analytics. So her experience comprises managing a full spectrum of HR at the regional level, spearheading new HR policies and processes, managing large-scale organizations, change and building up new universities from scratch. So her work experience spans across the private to the public sector, as well as local and international firms. She is also an active speaker locally and internationally and has appeared in more than 200 conferences. Dr. Lee is listed as one of the HRD's top 15 HR leaders in Asia Pacific in 2020. In 2018, the list of LinkedIn Power Profiles. In 2017, Outstanding Contributor of the HR and Professions HR in Asia. 2008, a Leading HR Leader of the Year award by Singapore HR Institute. In 2019, she was also recognized by the Singapore government for her contribution to education through a Public Service Administration Medal that was awarded by the Prime Minister's office. Dr. Jaclyn Lee has a PhD in Business Information System from University of Twente in Netherlands, Master of Business from Singapore Management University, Master of HRM from Rutgers University, and a Bachelor of Science in Psychology from Brandon University in Canada. She is also the author of the book entitled Accelerating Organization Culture Change. So please join me and welcome Dr. Jaclyn Lee for our event as a keynote speaker to deliver this important presentation. Dr. Jaclyn Lee.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction. Today, I'm really excited to be able to share on the topic of HR analytics. So without much further ado, I will start the presentation. Let me share my slide. Okay. How to transform organizations through people analytics, right? If you think about what's happening in digital transformation, we move from the first industry, which is the steam engine, mechanization to electrification, which is, the invention of electricity, to the third industrial revolution, which is really IT computing and communications. But you think about what is happening in today's world, the fourth industry revolution, and which is really end-to-end digital, intelligent systems, and really the Internet of Things. So we really moved from mechanization in the 18th century to today, the age of autonomy. Of course, I've not added the fifth industry revolution, which is your pandemic. Okay, anyway, that's not a revolution. That's the pandemic, okay? Right, so because of that, we have 6 mega trends that's happening in the world today. People and the Internet, a lot more wearable, implantable technologies, for people to connect and interact. AI and big data has advanced so and evolved so rapidly in today's world that now it's able to kind of learn and evolve by itself. Sharing economy and distributed trust. I'm sure many of you are impacted by this in the area of megatrends because a lot of us are now ordering food, buying things through e-commerce platforms. So a lot of these new technologies are replacing third-party vendors. Right, the other fourth area, which is computing, communications, and storage everywhere, because of the rapid decline, the size, the power, as well as the cost of technology, this has led to really ubiquitous computing and connectivity in the world, anywhere, anytime now. So I remember, when I was a student in Canada, in the late 1980s, I don't remember seeing a handphone. It's so hard to even, reach out to my parents. Phone bills were expensive, and you had to write a letter. But today, you just press a button, you WhatsApp. Today, I'm able to talk to you guys without traveling to the Maldives through the use of basically, digital technologies. So you think about that, the other fifth mega trend is really the digitization of matter. Because of the advances in 3D printing, you're going to see a lot more revolution in the area of 3D printing, impacting healthcare, impacting all kinds of sensors, all kinds of devices, and 3D printing is going to be very big in healthcare because can you imagine 30 years down the road, it can print a human organ. And the last area, which is the Internet of Things, these are really smaller, smarter, cheaper sensors. And now you see sensors everywhere, in clothes, in transportation, which is a very, very big area where basically, IoT devices are very prevalent. And today we can also see all kinds of Bluetooth devices in our homes, right? Your phone is also a big Bluetooth device. So we look at these 6 mega trends. What's happening is, the impact of digital transformation. It's really changing the nature of work and jobs. Jobs are now being replaced by advanced robotics and machine intelligence at a much faster pace that it is being created. And what's the innovation economy? Really, now you think about which are the most powerful companies in the world. It's really not your supermarkets, but it's really your companies like Google, Facebook, because they control data. So the new currency is going to be information and data. And the new form of capital is really going to be creative talents and really multidisciplinary skills that are not just one dimension, but across. It means a T-shaped kind of skill set. While you have the depth, you also need to have the expertise, the breadth of expertise. So now ordinary people today really have access to digital networks and to acquire information, to communicate one another. So if you think about the entire impact of digital transformation, I'm sure all of you are in HR, most of you are in HR, you realize that jobs are going to change. It's impacting jobs, it's impacting even nature of work, impacting individuals, impacting the whole ecosystem around us. So if you look at all these things that are happening, future of jobs, the industry 4.0, if you look at the left, physical manual labor, as well as very routine administrative jobs are going to be replaced by robots and machines. And the newer jobs are going to be in a lot more creative, innovative kind of skill set. So today, I'm sure many of you heard of RPA, robotic process automation. That is actually going to, it's now currently jobs that are much more routine, mundane, predictable, and the bots are able to do it at a much faster pace than a human can do. So if you think about this kind of things happening, it's quite frightening about how fast jobs are being replaced. So newer jobs are going to be, as I explained, more cross-disciplinary knowledge, creative, innovative, personal kind of communication skills. Your mid and low skill jobs involving manual and routine tasks are going to come down. And I really kind of imagine the day when autonomous vehicles are going to hit the road. Can you imagine trucks that are autonomous? The entire highway ecosystem is going to go away. Truck drivers are going to lose their jobs. So you think about the impact of all this automation in the next 20 years, it's going to be quite prevalent that some sectors are going to be very badly hit. We can see from the pandemic, already some sectors are being hit quite badly. So if you think about that, having a growth mindset, a mindset to learn, really learn cross-disciplinary learning is going to be really the future for us, for continuous and lifelong learning. So we look at this, I'm talking about the fourth industry revolution, how it's impacting jobs, the mega trends that are happening in the world today, and why HR as a field need to transform, jobs have to transform. And one of the really, really critical skill sets is really computational thinking and analytics. It's really going to be a key skill set for the future. Why? Because it's become a reality, whether we like it or not, as I explained. The ability of software to evolve with smaller, smarter sensors, with all this digital transformation, analytics and big data is going to be a reality in our everyday life. Data scientists are now required to plow through mountains of data. You've got to be able to spot trends, patterns, for use in consumer marketing, human resources, banking, and many other sectors. So if you think about that, skills such as pattern recognition, algorithm design, data analysis, they're going to become very core skills in the future to come. Not just for the human resource profession, but it's hitting almost every profession. So I have a big passion really for this area because I really see that a lot of the human resource, transactional human resource we do, a lot of the traditional human resource we do, it's going to be impacted by big data. And HR professionals have a real urgency now to be able to be more computational, to be able to use data to help us add value to the business that we support, right? So let me move on. So what is really data, driven skills? It's really expert analysis. It's going to be your key to success. Being able to understand data analytics, plowing through mountains of data, and using analytics to pull data for scenario planning and decision modeling. In some of the classes that I teach on foundation data science, we're already using tools to do workforce planning, really by manipulating scenarios to look at our workforce plan for the future. So that it's again another area that requires you to be able to think computationally. So if you think about it in the future, the job of the chief statistician is going to become the sexiest in the future to come. So when you shake your hands with somebody, say, hey, I'm a chief statistician. Wow, everybody's going to say, wow, that's the sexiest job, of the future. So let me move on to the next topic, right? So really, what is analytics? So a lot of people ask me, so Jack, what is analytics? Actually, it's nothing more than the discovery and communication of really meaningful patterns in data. So you're not just looking at data, but you want to take data and make sense out of data. So what does it mean, in a sense of analytics, human resource analytics? So if you think about human resource analytics, it's nothing more than just taking business intelligence and your people data. End of the day, all you want to do is to improve employee performance and get better returns on your business performance, right? So the job of human resource, end of the day, human resource analytics is not just analytics for the sake of analytics. Human resource analytics is all about the business. So end of the day, we want to be able to use data to add value to your business. And the way to add value is to be able to have insights into employee trends, employee patterns, so that you want to improve employee performance. And end of the day, with the better improved employee performance, you can drive business excellence. So human resource analytics is really the systematic identification and the quantification of your people drivers of business outcomes. So you want to be able to take the HR profession and quantify it so that you can use these quantitative numbers or patterns or trends analysis to improve employee performance, so to have better decision making and improve your business ROI. So organizations realize that, good HR practices is really no longer good enough, because you want a lot more data-driven approach to HR. So I used to work for a company called General Motors in the 1990s. So we used to have this thing called a people-centered management. So I said, wow, we're so great. We are a people-centered management organization, and we have good practices. Excuse me. What does it mean to have good practices? Does good practices bring you better profits? Does it help you to improve business performance? Really, not really, because you realize nowadays that it's no longer good enough to have good HR practices. You want a more data-driven approach in HR. You want more evidence-based HR. You want to bring down the human subjectivity. I'm sure many of you have heard the halo effect. Wow, so employee A has done very well for the last 9 months. The last 3 months, he made a fatal mistake, and I'm not going to give him a good performance grading. So this is again human bias. So you want to bring down all these kind of human biases through quantitative data. And you also want HR to have a more strategic role in the business. So I often share in my classes that, the CFO can go to the board and show very quantifiable financial ratios. How about the human resource? The CHRO, can we go to the board and say, look, I can now show my numbers to say that, hey, if I do this, I'm going to improve business performance by 10%. So we want to be able to go to the board and have a more strategic role for HR by using data-driven HR. So analytics helps you to answer questions such as, will our managers become better managers if they go for training? If I send so-and-so for training, is he or she going to come back and improve his or her performance so that you can drive business excellence? Today, do we know? Are we able to measure, basically investment in training? Are we able to know whether our appraisal systems are effective? How do you know whether you're hiring right people? Are the people that I bring in able to bring business value? How am I able to know that the people that are bringing are of the right talent mix to support business growth? So you want to know about also how effective are your resourcing processes. For example, I want to know that, hey, I'm able to optimize my resourcing processes within a certain period of time so that I bring efficiency to our recruitment processes. So essentially, data is important because you want to be able to move from a more kind of intuitive, good practices kind of HR practice to a more quantifiable HR, evidence-driven, and having a strategic role for HR and be able to go to the board and present numbers, right? That's why data is so important, right? So I would like to introduce you to Professor Tom Davenport. He is an expert in people analytics, and together with Jeff Swash from Deloitte. So let us hear from them. What is the state of the human, resource analytics in most industries? Let's watch this short video.
Hello and welcome to the press room at Deloitte University. Today, we're featuring a conversation about talent analytics and the new attraction. We have with us here in the studio, Tom Davenport, and we also have Jeff Schwartz. Tom, I'd like to begin with you in understanding what is talent analytics?
It's really making data and analytical decisions in the talent management area. So it might be about recruiting, it might be about retention, it might be about what kinds of people fit best into particular jobs. But the idea is using either descriptive analytics, things that tell you what happened in the past, or predictive and prescriptive analytics, things that tell you about the future and what you should do to really guide your decision making about important talent issues.
Where are companies at with this?
It's interesting to think about where companies are at, because there's clearly been a major buzz in the last couple of years around big data, around analytics generally, Tom. We've certainly seen that in the market. And one of the things that we've been looking at is where HR and talent and business leaders are around applying analytics, specifically in the talent area. And the way I would describe it, Sean, is on average, the HR and business community is probably flying at about 500 feet above the ground. That we've made.
Is that enough for escape velocity?
Tom, I think we may have made liftoff, but we're not flying very high. And for some companies, they're every once in a while dipping down and hitting the tops of the trees. So, but what we're really seeing is, and we're not surprised by this, is a bifurcation in what's happening. There are a small number of companies that for several years have really been managing and leading differently because of the way they're using analytics, both talent analytics and business analytics. They really are managing their people and their business quite differently. Unfortunately, that's still a small number. A smaller number of companies are still trying to get to a liftoff mode, where they are, in the last year or two, been looking at analytics, but they're really struggling with some key challenges that they're getting started. So some companies making real progress, other companies are barely, flying just above the treetops at 500 feet.
Some of the high-tech companies, Silicon Valley companies, seem to be among the faster movers in this space. Some of the big resource-oriented companies, kind of oil and so on, seem to be sort of early adopters, in part because they haven't hired for quite a while, given the economic climate, and that they had employees who stayed around. So they know they're going to have to hire a lot of people in the current graduating workforce, and they want to do a good job of it. But there are different reasons why different industries have slower and faster paces, but there definitely is a split.
So as you can see from the sharing by Tom Davenport and Jeff Swatch, the human resource industry has not really taken off very much in the area of talent analytics, but it's kind of gaining more traction in today's digital economy, and I see a lot more people now coming forward to learn. So you asked me, Jaclyn, how do you start the human resource analytics function? What kind of skill set should I have? So, right, there are multiple skill sets that are needed to start a human resource analytics function. So if you look at my chart, there are 5 skill sets here. Of course, most of us, if you look at the middle box, would already have the HR expertise, that would be scientific background in social sciences, insight into existing HR processes, to be able to bridge traditional HR with people analytics expertise. But the other 4 areas that are very critical for you to start an analytics function to understand is, if you look to your right, data analytics, you've got to be able to have skills in statistics. You've got to be able to have skills to understand the different analytics methods. You will need to have experience in working with data and visualization. It means simple things like Excel, not your normal spreadsheet, but the data analysis toolkit in Excel. SPS, R is a programming language, and visualization using tools to be able to visualize your data. And if you look at the left-hand side, the other very core skill set is really understanding the business. As I explained, human resource analytics, it's not just about data, but it's really about supporting the business. So fundamentally, it is very, very important for you to know the business challenges. What are the key processes and expertise that can connect HR to company's strategic goals? So for example, I used to work for a very large manpower organization called Certis. We have about 50,000 employees globally. And so one of the biggest challenges in Certis is manpower recruitment, being able to supply enough security manpower to the sales team so that they can sell our services to customers. So one of the key challenges in HR is really not just understanding the business, but understanding how the entire sales pipeline funnel to manpower resourcing. So once you understand the entire supply chain of how the business services flow from sales to fulfillment of manpower needs, I was able to basically use a lot of data to be able to funnel resources into the manpower supply chain so that we are able to help the businesses scale up. So that's basically a very good use of analytics. So understanding the business is important. The other key skills is once you have the data, once you have the analytics, how do you sell the data to the business? Is where visualization skills become important. The ability to consult with the business, be a strategic human resource partner, and being able to sell the data insights to the business. And that's where you need to learn visualization skills, learning how to use tools like ClickSense, Power BI, Tableau, to push your data into beautiful visuals to be able to consult and show insights into data for your key business units. Now, of course, the other important skill sets, if you look to your right-hand side, is really understanding IT business IT structures, because when you do analytics, one of the important components is really data. How do I pull data? Where do I get the data from? So that's where you need to work with your IT director to understand where are the data sources. Can I put the data into a warehouse? Can I put information from the data warehouse? So you got to be able to aggregate data from different systems and knowledge of data security. So if you look at data analytics, it's actually a very complex skill set. It's not just one skill set, but it's 5 different skill sets combined together. So you asked me, Jack, so wow, sounds pretty complex. How do I do it? So do not worry, do not fret. Don't be over intimidated by it, because it is always a journey. Even myself, I'm learning along the way. So today, I hope to be able to share with you some insights. How do you start your analytics journey? How do you acquire the basic skill sets? How do you use some kind of a simple, even simple data set to help you get started on your analytics journey? So let's take a look at 4 levels of analytical maturity. Of course, the first level is operational reporting. We are very, very good in operational reporting. HR folks can do reports, data accuracy and timeliness. But second level of reporting is really advanced reporting. You want to be able to use benchmarks and dashboards to help your leaders in decision making. Now, the third level of statistical analysis is really the ability to develop statistical tools to solve business problems. This involves developing models, solutions, and integrating data together. And the fourth level of skill set is really your predictive analysis. Developing a predictive model, scenario planning, integration with strategic workforce planning. So today I would like to ask the audience here, I believe there's about 60 to 70 people now in this audience. I'd like to ask you, where do you think you are right now? Are you guys at level 1 of analytical maturity? Are you at level 2? Or are you at level 3 or level 4? So I have a very simple toolkit that we have developed that you answer probably about 9 to 10 questions. And the tool is able to tell you where you are right now in your level of analytical maturity. So let's pause, take out your iPhones, scan this QR code, and take about 2 to 3 minutes to do this simple exercise. And I would love the audience to basically key into the chat to let me know where are most of you in terms of your analytical maturity. So let's do this little test right now.
Dr. Jacklyn, maybe you could also share the link in the chat groups, because some of them may be using their own mobile to.
Yeah, we'll do
Yeah.
that. I need to kind of, okay, let me just do this. So I'll just cut and paste here. For those of you who have finished doing, please type into the chat group and tell me where you are right now. So at least I can assess your level. Level 3, which is very good. Level 3 means you're already doing, developing quite a lot of models, you know. Okay, looks like most of you are in level 3. Impressive. Level 2, some are level 2, some are level 3. Okay. Wow, this group is impressive. Level 3. Level 1, some are level 1. So we have a range from level 1 to level 3. Excellent. So really, really good to know. Okay, I shall move on with the presentation. So this is just a little tool to kind of test yourself where you are right now. You could be between level 2 to level 3. Doesn't really matter, but it's just a fun little test that we developed. Okay, let me move on. So some common questions we ask ourselves is, what is the return on investment in L&D? Which groups do benefit the most? What kind of employees should I hire? How do I compensate employees so that they can perform at their best? Do your fitness programs really benefit employees' health? Who are most likely to leave the company and why? Right. So these are some of common questions as HR professionals we ask ourselves. So let me share with you about Agile HR Analytics. So a lot of you said, how do I start this function, Jack? Very simple. Do not think too complex, okay? I always said start with the 80-20 principle. Start with the business problem that really adds value. So in the Certis example, in the security company I worked in, the number one burning problem was for the business was really manpower. They said, Jack, if you could solve the manpower problem for me, you could solve 80% of the problems. I said, fine. And then we managed to solve the manpower problem in fact 6 to 9 months, and there was a continuous stream of manpower to supply to the business. So go for a small target group or a core team and look at the most relevant data source. And remember what I always share about is really focus on adding value to your customer. Keep it simple and continuously learn, right? So let's get into, how to start, right? Phase 1, business and marketing acumen. Remember, I always talk about going back to the business. Second phase is really understanding IT, HR, and basic statistics can provide early wins. So I run a module for called Introduction to Human Resource Analytics. So I just train about 300 HR mid-career professionals. About 2 months ago, some of them have been displaced because of the pandemic. A lot of them were from the hospitality sector, retail sectors. So I was teaching Introduction to Human Resource Analytics, and it was very, very simple. All I did was teach them how to start the function, some simple tools using Excel, basic statistics. And wonderful thing is that several months, 1 or 2 months later, some of them sent email to me, send message to me to LinkedIn, say, Jack, I have managed to implement some of the ideas in my company. And my senior management is so impressed, with what I'm able to now show them in terms of tangible results. So I went for something that was simple and we solved a simple problem. So I've heard many of those that we have trained come back and say, wow, I just did something simple. It doesn't have to be too complex. We're able to actually make a difference to the business. So often advanced analytics come in at a later point, not at the immediate stage, because you want to start with something simple first. Right, so let me go into analytics maturity levels. How do you move from operational to strategic? Now, if you think about the business, concerns at a very operational level, is about workforce-driven operational effectiveness. How do I make sure that workforce is effective? How do I make sure that my operations is doing well, working well? HR at that operational level thinks about the dashboard, things about the transactional HR processes and process improvements. But if you think about the business concerns at the strategic level, their businesses are always concerned about cost reduction. Now with the pandemic, I'm sure many of your hotels' occupancy has come down. How do you make sure you're still profitable? So it's about cost reduction, it's about M&S, divestment. They want to know strategic workforce planning. How are we mobilizing the workforce to effectively support the business? They want to look at very critical talent issues. So for human resource functions, it's really about the talent life cycle. How do we support the business in terms of the entire talent life cycle? How do we make sure that we have the right report system in place, and performance management, and also the employee experience? So human resource analytics is really about supporting the business, not just at operational level, but at a strategic level, so that we are able to impact cost, impact strategic workforce planning, and solve critical talent issues. So let me move on. So let me show you the human resource data science cycle. So if we look at in the data science cycle in analytics, there's always 5 steps. So remember, I talk about step 1 is always asking the right questions. So asking the right questions means understanding the business problem. We normally do not start an analytics project by trying to get statistics and looking at data without understanding the business problem. So I always tell my students, and I tell my staff, my team, what is the business problem? What's the burning business problem that is bothering the business? Let's try and solve that through the use of data. And once you're quite clear about the business problem you were trying to solve, so case in point, I'm going back again to that Certis example. So when we had that problem about the workforce, the gaps in the manpower in terms of the business needs, and there was not enough manpower. So what I did was, in order to understand the business problem, I went down to sales meetings, and I actually sat through with my sales department and understand how the pipeline management works. So I asked them questions like, if you go out and bid for 20 tenders, how many % success rate? For example, I might get 50% success rate in my tenders, right? So, and then after that, when I get my tenders in, what does it translate into manpower in the next 9 month cycle? So my sales folks will say, look, Jack, if you can give me 1,500 people in the next 9 months, and I can fulfill 50% of the tenders out there, I'm going to bring another $20, $30 million of revenue to the business. So I understood that 1,002 was maybe the number from the sales. But then I have to go down to the business, to the operations department to understand, hey, look, what does it mean if I take 1,002? I need to factor in MC rates, training, pass-fail rates. I have to understand successful recruitment rates. If I interview 50 people, what's my success of closing the 50 candidates? So basically, very, very focused. We just solve nothing but a manpower problem, right? So, and then from there, I start to pick the right data. The right data means understanding the recruitment hit rate, the attrition rate, the Emcee rates, the passing and failure rates of training. So we actually took all that data and used that data to understand the problem. And then from there, we were able to look at the entire funnel, all the way from sales pipeline, all the way to manpower supply onto the ground, right? So once you understand the data to pick, you move into the next step, which is cleaning your data. So when you look at data, a lot of data is very corrupted. So data cleaning means you got to be able to take the data, make sure that your data set doesn't have duplicate IDs. It reflects real world values, that your data is not corrupted and not historical data. So that means you have to clean the data. So the third step in the data science cycle is cleaning the entire data set. After you clean, you notice that the data analysis, the statistical part, does not come in step 1, step 2, step 3, it actually comes in step 4. So the data analysis is actually not the difficult part. The most difficult part is the business question, picking the right data and cleaning the data. Once you're able to do the data analysis, you move into your step 5, which is interpretation and execution, which is your data dashboards and data storytelling, right? Okay, so let's go into each step of the process. So I would like to share with you a case study of DBS Bank. It's the biggest bank in Singapore. So they did a project called Project Marvel. So this basically, if you look at the entire data science cycle, this is an interesting case study. Business problem is I want to hire smart. I want to provide good coaching and training that can address non-performance and manage well. So once I'm able to hire well, I provide the right coaching and training, I'm able to address non-performance, and I'm able to manage well, I'm able to see business growth. So basically, how does the DBS Bank use the data cycle to look at the insights? So basically, remember the 3 business problem is about hiring smart, it's about coaching, it's about managing. So what DBS Bank did was they went to study the attributes of a good salesperson. So this is really picking the right data. So in order to do this well, I want to know what makes a good salesperson. I want to know what makes relationship managers quit early. So basically the question here is how to use the data science cycle to solve this whole business problem. So I'd like to show you a short video of about a minute about the entire DBS case study and how they use the data science cycle to solve the problem. Let's take a look at the video. as you can see, the DBS example was really using the data science cycle. Business problem, they came out with a hypothesis, they cleaned the data, they knew what are the data source to pick, and then they did the analysis and they came up with the insights that can help them actually improve business performance. So I'm just going to move on next. As this is just a 45 to 50 minute sharing, I can probably just give a very quick overview, high level overview. But analytics is a journey. There is a lot of techniques and skill sets that can be learned. But hopefully from today's talk, you have a good understanding of the overview and some techniques on how to start your data analytics journey. So now I'm going to go into the next segment very quickly about some techniques we use in HR data analytics. So there are many different types of tools, okay? If you look at the different levels of analytics, the 4 levels, at a very descriptive analytics kind of level, what happened, which is really your simple reporting. But at the diagnostic analytics, level, which is level 2, you want to try and understand more about what's happening, understanding the insights. So we normally look at things like correlation, scatter plots using R, chi-square test, or ANOVAs, which is analysis of variance. And in predictive analysis, we use tools like regression. We use tools like decision tree and random forest, machine learning, modeling, predictive modeling. In prescriptive analytics, it's a lot more mathematical, more from models. We create change by manipulating reality based on previous insights. So if you look at some of these tools, right, and another tool that's quite interesting is called logistic regression. It's a classical algorithm. And basically, this is a very interesting tool because it helps you to predict. It's a very predictive tool, the likelihood of a disease or illness for a given population. In human resource, we use a lot of this kind of tools called logistic regression to look at patterns that can lead to higher employee retention. So if you look at a logistic regression model on the left, you always have your independent variables on your left and your binary variables on the right. So we always look at, for example, there are 3 factors that can make employees happy or employees sad. So we use data from maybe the last 5 years, feed into this model. And from here, we are able to understand and predict why employees leave us and look at a future projection of in the next year or so, how many more employees are going to leave us and what are the profiles that are most likely to leave us. So this is basically done using basically a programming language called R and through an algorithm called logistic regression, okay? And the next tool is basically ANOVA in resourcing analytics. So if you look at ANOVA, it's really analysis of variance. We take the means of different groups of control, different groups of people or different groups of departments and try and compare. So this is a very interesting project that I did for my department. So one day my resourcing manager came to me and said, "Boss, I do not like the finance department." I said, "Why?" "Because they sit on the resumes for a long time." I said, "How do you know it is true?" He says, "I think so." I said, "Well, I don't believe in I think so. Why don't you study, go for a course in statistics and show me real hardcore data?" So, well, of course, he regrets saying that because after that, he was forced to take out a 6-month course in statistics. And they did a 1-year data collection. And interesting, if you look at this chart, and they start to look at all the different departments. Okay, these are basically your sample size. And these are your average means of the number of days it takes to recruit, okay, from 0 to negative to positive for 71 days. And these are the departments. And basically, if you look at here, the highest point is the department that took 71 days from the day a job was advertised to the day the offer letter was signed. And the shortest time period was a period of 30 over days. And when we start to look at the data, my manager realized to his horror that the finance department only took 31 days. So his perception of they take a long time, they sit on resumes, it's not true. It's anecdotal. So when you start to look at the data actually tells you a different story. We found out that the marketing department, another department called CD, actually sat on resumes. It took them 71 days. So when you have hard data like this, it is very hard to not know the facts, So after looking at this, he began to realize that, that was a perception issue. And then, of course, when we look at this data, we were able to go to these 2 departments and understand what went wrong and solve the bottleneck, okay? So this is another example of how effective analytics is. And this is another interesting model called linear regression. So in a linear regression example like this, you're actually able to take historical data and look at your premium, which is your brown line, versus your claims per head. So you can see the trend. When we did a predictive analysis, we could see that the trend of premiums going down, and also the trend of claims per employee going down when we look at a historical data set of 3 years. And that shows us that our medical, our health programs are working, that whatever we're doing, fitness programs are working, our premiums are coming down, our medical cost is going down. So this is done using a very simple linear regression model through the use of Excel data analysis. So this is another example. And the last example, which is quite interesting for training. So there's this company called MAHRP Drilling. They had a lot of problem retaining lead specialists. So they decided that instead of trying to recruit lead specialists, what happens if I were to train a group of people that are called specialist trainee, and I put them through a training program? Will it improve my talent retention and my cost per training? So they did this project over a period of 5 years. They had a peer group that didn't go through the intervention, and a group called specialist trainee that went through the intervention. And they found out something very interesting. After 5 years, there was no difference in the retention rate. But they found out that the time it took to develop into a lead specialist, they had a savings of 3.5 years. When they put people through a very specialized training program, and they realized that the total cost it cost them to train someone to lead specialists had a cost savings of $1 million per year per trainee. So this kind of interesting project where you collect data and track it over time is called a baseline intervention study, used very much in learning and development. It really helps you to understand, what is effective, what is not effective, and whether the investment is worth it. It is really an ROI study. So you can see from all my examples, from recruitment through all the way to learning and development, through benefits analysis, you can really see that data does make a lot of difference. If you're able to use tools, you're able to really have a more strategic role for HR. We're able to go to the table and use numbers to quantify the HR deliverables. So in my summary slide, I like to kind of talk about the 5 phases of human resource analytics. Phase 1 is really about justification. You put in the investment, you do your data collection. You have very rudimentary tools, but phase 2 is really where you start to have metrics. You have scorecards, you start to develop dashboards. And phase 3 is where you start to have KPIs. You start to have process improvements. You use more sophisticated tools. Phase 4 is really about value creation, which is what I talk about, really adding value to the business. You're able to make decisions based on data. You're able to connect people and investments together. Remember, I talked about the entire HR maturity cycle, where you're able to help your businesses solve talent issues. And to the last phase, which is really about creating change, achieving strategic goals. So in summary, I've gone through really entire journey of digital transformation, the 4th industry revolution, to data analysis skills, to introduction of data analytics, understanding what is the human resource data cycle, really introducing to the different tools and some examples of what it's like to use data for decision making, to this final slide on the journey towards human resource analytics. So I wish you all the best in your analytics journey, and very happy to take questions right now. Thank you very much. And please connect with me on LinkedIn for those of you who would like to read some of my articles on data analytics and digital transformations on the LinkedIn post. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the valuable value that you've added with us. Wonderful sharing, Dr. Jaclyn Lee. Here are some key points from what you shared that we got. The mindset of making decisions using data analytics. We got knew the important role of HR in creating a culture using data and analytics, and also not to just collect data, but use them to make business decisions. So the HR understanding the other key functions of business like marketing, finance, and operations. Thank you so much for this valuable session. Now we'll be taking questions from the audience. You can see some questions already been posted. So first of all, let's go to the very first questions posted to us. I can see that already it was answered in the chat, but I think I will read it out for the benefit of those who have not seen it in the chat. It's asking how to measure the performance while working from home. Is there any systematic mechanism? Dr. Lee?
I think end of the day, you got to be very clear when you send people to work from home. You don't just send them to work from home, but you got to have clear KPIs. So in the human resource analytics classes I teach, I always tell my students, you have to do HR scorecards. You could be very clear about the deliverables you want your team to achieve. And so that when you send them to work from home, there are very clear deliverables that is measurable. Otherwise, it's very, very hard to measure productivity if you don't have clear deliverables. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We've got another wonderful question. What can HR professionals do to learn HR analytics? Are there any specific programs? Over to you.
Yeah, so I think, as I said, it's an evolving journey. It's an extremely technical subject. It's not easy to grasp. Even when I share, because it's only 45 minutes, a bit difficult. I try to make it as simplified as possible. But if you can go onto the Coursera platform, there are lots of courses on human resource analytics. Go and take up a class in statistics. Talk to your IT department, talk to your internal departments that handles data. The finance people are particularly very good. So start by exactly just by learning, just go and learn, take up courses. And then application is where once you understand the statistical concepts and the business problem, the application comes in a lot easier.
Thank you so much. We are open for one more question. Meanwhile, I would like to ask you a question. What would we do if we don't already have a culture like this? How could we what could be a motivating factor for the whole team to move towards a data-driven platform? How could we motivate the team?
Yeah, it is, as I say, it is not easy to be computational. Even in Singapore, I spent a lot of time educating, talking about this topic. It doesn't come intuitively to HR professionals. We are more social sciences based or business. We come from different more business studies and social sciences, and not many HR folks are very computational. So I think it's important to have the right mindset. It's important to to start to think not to let this kind of fear overcome you. As it's a very technical subject, as I explained. So just take your time, and in organizations like with my team, it took me 3 years to convince them. It took me a long time. I kept talking to them, and it's just keep on drilling. So if you don't have a culture like this, culture transformation is not simple. You could do it, but start with simple statistics. As I say, it doesn't have to be very complex. Start with something simple. You can even do benchmarks first, or even dashboards. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think the very last question is also somewhat in line with that, but I'll read the question by Ms. Neha. How do we establish a data-driven culture in an organization? I think.
Yeah, which is I explained. I think it has to come from your senior management team. The head, the CHR, the leader has to speak and talk about data. If your CHRO is not open to changing culture through data, it's very, very difficult. So it has to start from the top. But if you are somebody, if you're at a working level and your CHRO or your bosses don't see the importance of data, then you can start by doing it at the local level. So go to your bosses and say, look, I'm able to, use some insights to look at, to help me make decisions on my job, and I'm able to do it, and then, once your bosses see that you have made at least a slight impact by using data, in your work, then you can slowly kind of, make that kind of impact, So as I say, for me to convince my team took a long time, a lot of just drilling with the HR community, a lot of training, a lot of speaking, public engagement, and just trying to get people to understand. So it's not an easy journey.
Yeah, Thank you so much for your valuable lessons, and we got from you. Wonderful learning there. Thank you so much, Dr. Lee.
Thank you for inviting me, and hope to see you guys soon in another seminar or conference.
So we look forward to. It's always a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you.
Okay. So next in our agenda is the closing remark. The closing remark will be given by our president of MAHRP to share some key events and activities coming up by MAHRP. President, Mr. Afif, over to you.
Thank you, Irasha, and thank you, Dr. Jaclyn Lee. This is your second session you delivered to MAHRP, and I'm very thankful for the connection, the network that we have, and that you can join with us and share this information. To all the participants, I believe you had a very good session. Definitely, there's a lot of information, and I'm sure you, like me, when you were probably going through the presentation, you must be wondering, how are we going to do this in your organization? How am I going to apply this learning? So this is something that you probably have to reflect back after the session and see how it applies to you and what you can use. But for the moment, if I could ask from all of you, I have actually posted a link in the group where you complete, and with that link you will be able to achieve or get your certificate from this session for that. But if I may ask from the participants that are on the call, did you have a good session? Was it helpful to you? Did you learn, or it made you more aware about what you're already practicing? If so, could you please go to the chat box and write yes, or maybe, or good, great, a comment that probably can help us to understand if you probably had a good session. Very good. So I see some comments coming there. And these kind of sessions are always helpful when you can reflect back after the session and see what you can use. I'll give you two examples as my closing remark. One of the examples I wrote was, I'm sure in many of your organizations, you go through the interview process, you hire candidates, you send them the offer letter, and they're scheduled to join you today. And they didn't show up to duty. And you try to then contact them after a couple of hours, and they don't respond at all. So of course, after 2 or 3 days, you consider they're not going to show up, you offer the job to someone else. If you have a trend in your organization, maybe that is the moment when you can actually use that data and perhaps find a way to connect with them and see why they last minute they decided not. It may have nothing to do with the organization. It could be that those candidates or the applicants don't have the right etiquettes probably, or maybe they have not learned that even if you get a better offer, like if you already have a job and you're about to join tomorrow and you got another job which is better, the courtesy to call the organization and tell them. These are the data you can use. The another example or experiment I recently did was in our organization, we wanted to develop series of questions that our head of departments must ask during interviews. So I basically asked all the HODs to write up all the questions. I gave them the competencies, and they all came up with a set of questions. And then we, of course, analyze the questions. We choose which questions we're going to ask if we want to check this behavior or that particular behavior. So there's always a lot you can learn from this. And I really hope that from MAHRP, that all of you found this session very helpful. I just want to also share with all of you that we have our L&D conference coming up, Learning and Development Conference. Obviously, we wish that we can have this event in person. Our last L&D conference was in 2019. And not to have that in 2 years down in a row, physically as an in-person event is quite sad, I must say, but this is the reality of the world. So we are hoping to have that event in July. Please do stay tuned for our social platforms. We will be announcing the event in the next couple of days. Ideally, we're looking at middle of July or could be end of July, where it will be a 2 half-day session or 2 full-day sessions. We're currently speaking with various professionals to join us in our event as speakers. And our theme we're looking for L&D conference is around transformation and culture. So obviously very much related to the topic that we spoke today. And the other announcement I would like to share with all of you is regarding the HR conference. I'm sure all of you know that last year we planned to have it. We moved it a couple of times. Very challenging, and well, we haven't given up. So we will have that event. We are working on a plan. Hopefully, we can have that event in October, but again, it all depends on how things are going to move around. My best estimation is the next 3-4 months. We probably may not be able to have large physical events. Probably after September, if the numbers improve, and if from a case spread numbers, if it goes down and if majority of the population is vaccinated, we could be able to have some smaller events. So let's hope. Regardless, we will also have virtual event if things go in our favor. So with that, once again, I would like to thank Dr. Lee and also Irasha as our host for today's event. I look forward to seeing all of you probably in a couple of weeks' time on another HR knowledge or HR best practice session. So thank you very much to all participants. And if you have taken time to complete the assessment link, we will email you the certificate. I have just reposted that again. Let me repost it to all the participants so you can get the link and you can complete it again. So thank you. Over to our MC just to move the event.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Wonderful news. Thank you so much, Mr. President, Mr. Afif. We all look forward for both of the events that's coming up. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your participation today, and we look forward for having you at our next event. All the best and take care of each other and stay safe. Thank you.